We're going live.
What the hell do you do when this thing shows up at your front door? So correct me if I'm wrong. I believe this is a 22 Jeep Gladiator.
But if you pull it up on any auction site appraisal tool, it's going to come up as a Gladiator. But looking at this thing, it's got dual rear axles. You're calling it a 6x6?
Yeah, so it's definitely a 6x6. They allegedly made 181 of these. What was it called?
Apocalypse or something?
Apocalypse. Yes.
Kind of looks like it too.
Yeah. So when you look at
which means the end of the world.
End of the world. It definitely had.
It could be that when it pulls up to get appraised for the used car manager, right?
So to kind of tell a quick story about this one arrived, it shows up on on our feed, and somebody's looking for a number, and they reach out and they say, hey, like what would you pay for this? So just, taking a quick look at it and the whole 9 yards, asking for additional information, we get the window sticker from the company that does the Apocalypse package, which lists it somewhere around $181,000. How many miles did it have, Chrissy?
I forget.
20-something thousand miles.
22,000.
22,000. So long story short, we're fast forwarding through and, we're taking a look at it. And we're trying to formulate a number. So obviously, when this thing pulls up, you want to be definitely you want to be conservative and you want to pay attention because the market for this thing is definitely all over the place. How many people want a 6x6 diesel engine truck, which is a whole nother story.
Well, let's pump the brakes real quick. So this thing pulls up. You got a used car manager going out there to look at it. Is there a software tool that can break down a Apocalypse custom dual rear axle diesel engine, anything that can vindicate that?
None whatsoever. It'll automatically just default to its original car, which was a Sport Gladiator, which lists.
So in a normal dealerships, this comes in. What's a used car manager thinking? What are they like when they call you guys? You guys are the experts. The second line of defense. You're the calling back for reinforcements, reconnaissance. When they call you up, what are they typically saying when they're calling you?
They're calling and they're saying, "What the hell do I do with it?"
So when they're looking at this thing, there's no comps, there's no retail comps, there's no auction comp for something like this.
No, the first place that people would generally look to go to would be
trailer,
bringatrailer.com or something
for
like
instance, or cars and bids.
eBay would be another one that you might find one that transacted at some point over the years, but there's no readily available. And from what I understand, no two of them are exactly the same. So now that we were getting into the meat and potatoes of what we got, and the phone rings of, holy, what the hell do we do with this thing? Now we're going to start pulling it apart, looking at what it has, why it's different from some of the other ones. Chrissy, what was the other car I bought that time? That goofy thing for a couple of 200.
What was that thing called? A Rivian tank, Resvani tank.
Resvani tank with smoke screen. I mean, that's pretty cool. You get a.
That is pretty cool. Actually, I love Resvanis.
So anyway, long story short, the market on these types of things are extremely short, and you got to know what the hell's flying. So our team, obviously, we've been doing this a long time. We know the answers to the questions, but you got to know what questions to ask, right? So the first and foremost, the most important thing you want to dive into on this is the diesel engine. The problem with the diesel engine is that it's too big for that. It's actually a mismatch. It's nowhere near as good as the gas, and it's nowhere as desirable as a gas motor.
The gas is a Hemi. So they put a Hemi or a diesel. Everyone's going to want the Hemi.
So the first problem and the first red flag is, okay, great. Let's back into how we divide that a number, right? It cost $181,000. Forget about who wants it, who doesn't want it. We want to set the foundation for where can a dealer trade this thing and make 50 cents or not go backward, right? So by doing the math that we've done in our heads, that has worked scientifically, I might add, for years. Can't miss it. Take what it cost, back out the original. So if a good one's worth $32,000, we're looking at 25 to maybe 30 cents on the dollar. Correct me if I'm wrong, Chrissy, on the upgrade package itself. So if you had 30 cents to the dollar and it was 181,000, you back out to 32, you do the math. What do you come up with? Somewhere probably around an $80,000 truck. What's great about this story is, as the guy reached out, he already traded it. So our first number was probably, before we went back to it, was probably somewhere around 90 to 100. But that was before we knew it had the diesel engine, which is extremely undesirable.
The other part with that is it's hard to retail that car. It's hard to, because you don't have a retail comp. Cars.com and other third-party sites are not going to pick that up because there's no VIN coding to be able to code exactly what it is. So, like what Chris said, you're relegated to bring a trailer, eBay, other sites, because with us or anybody else is going to come up as a gladiator. Now you can put all the other stuff in the features, but not you got to be the best end user for that thing.
Sure. So all in all, it was a very interesting thing. You probably never going to see one in your life, but if you do,
What are the top 3 things every dealer should take away if they see some oddball car like this? That's, what do I do with this? What's step 1, 2, 3?
Number one's definitely desirability. Where it starts from and where it ends starts with desirability. In the car business, that's obviously the one thing that we always live by is it a desirable car? Who wants it? How much was it to build? How often, or how many of them do you see? All of that stuff ties directly into it. That's number one. Number two, price point. Is it a realistic price point? Is it something I really could retail, even though I'm definitely not the best end user? Do I make a phone call to call a professional to get somebody that would write a check in case I back myself into a corner? And three, and most importantly, I definitely think that it ties back into number one, desirability. Because if you got something hot, it doesn't matter what it is, they'll find you, and that's always how it is. We've never gotten stuck with a bad car or with a good car. Never. No matter what we've paid, you can never get stuck with a good one. So, do I think a Jeep is probably a good product for 181,000? Absolutely not. But
They knew that when they bought it.
Yeah, they knew that. And at the end of the day, we always know there's an ass for every seat. So that's all I know.
It's not, as long as you're the best end user. All right, so I want to switch gears for a second. Chris, we're talking about this earlier. We're looking at this guy on TikTok and Instagram, Tommy, who's a car expert, self-proclaimed. So I want to break down this gentleman is saying that the Toyota market is, used car market is crashing. The values are about to crash because of these new car discounts. I haven't been seeing that. Can you add some color to what you're seeing on the late model Toyota space?
Sure. I mean, it's an interesting point that got brought up because I agree with you. I'm not saying it either. But in the wholesale market, what we see, and we do tend to buy a lot of Toyotas, and especially a lot of late model ones. What happens is most manufacturers don't bid on their own cars. So a BMW store is not necessarily buying a used BMW. And it seems to happen throughout most of the makes. However, with Toyota, they are the ones buying in the lane and paying best end user money for these cars. Corolla's doing close to what they do for MSRP. Sequoias, Forerunners. I mean, the product overall is desirable. I really don't see any crashing in prices. They're probably the most steady car out there. And
my daughter has a 2000. Okay, so I got one more question to tag on to this because you just said something interesting, that Toyota is the only manufacturer where their dealers are buying their product. So I used to think that Lexus dealers are the best end user for Lexus, and Jaguar dealers are the best end user for Jaguars and Land Rovers and that sort of thing. So if a JLR dealer isn't the best end user, or a BMW dealer isn't the best end user, who is?
A lot of times what you'll find is a high-end used car store that specializes in said type of product, that knows their market very well, knows exactly what they could sell and how much they could sell it for. Those are the people out there that tend to be the best end users for these luxury cars. You even get into the exotic cars. It's not a Lamborghini store buying a Lamborghini. It's usually a high-end used car store buying the car. So It really is an interesting dichotomy, but that ends up being the case. Is, you know, a used car dealer, they always need inventory. They tend to be a little bit more in tune with the wholesale market because that's their whole entire, you know, there's like us in a degree as wholesalers, and they know they could sell it. They end up being the best end user for the cars.
I also think part of the scenario though is that they have new ones to compare it to, where the used car guy don't know any better. You know what I mean? We see it all the time when you know this guy. Well, I don't want that car; it's too close to new. I don't know how many times we've heard, you know, the price is too close to new, and you can get that.
Or you can lease a new one for this, or you can finance a new one for this. It's almost like they're poisoned with knowledge.
Correct. They
Yes.
know too much.
And then the car gets exposed to the best end user, and you're sitting there scratching your head. The same thing used to happen actually when I was a used car manager in the Mercedes world years ago. I used to sit there and watch a car, and I scratched my head and said, "Where are they going with it?" Being on the other side, now I get a better understanding that I just wasn't the best end user for that car.
No, I saw it all the time in every franchise I ever worked in, where we would be selling Corollas for, of course, you'd have talked about this before, 4 or 5 grand off. You know, at the end of the quarter, end of the month, we're selling the rental car companies for thousands less than we were selling them for in our used car lot. In our used car lot, they were still 6 days, 7 days average days to sale. And these Corollas would just fly out of there for thousands more used than they were new. And it was crazy.
Oh, yeah, it's crazy. And that goes back to, you know, COVID and the rental car. I mean, that segment of cars where, you know, the rental cars got swallowed up, the manufacturers turned off their supply. They turned to the auction to buy cars. Different end user scenario. And it really inflated those cars up. And I really haven't seen it pull back on those cheaper Civic, Corolla, Camry, things like that.
It's the same thing with pickup trucks too, though. It specifically Tundras and Tacomas, and you know these guys. There's a new one. They know what they can sell a new one for, and then when you go into the market and you look at what they're selling for used, the comparison is, you know, hundreds away. It's not thousands away. It's like, you know, it's right on the doorstep of a new one, and the used car guy, he don't, you know, he don't care. And it's the same thing almost with almost all these pickup trucks right now, because as you change the model year over, they still have 24s on the lot, but they also get 8, 9, 10, $12,000 back. But at the auto auction and other markets, they don't know and they don't care.
You're a used car dealer. What are the 3 top trades? The ones like you know, the 2025 Escalade, ESV, what are the gems that are bringing all the money over MMR versus MSR, original MSRP, that kind of stuff?
Right. I mean, it's spring market, right? Like, so I think we're trying to buy anything that's running through any kind of drive, whether it be a service drive, whether it's coming through your trade-in drive, wherever these cars are coming from, we're trying to buy them because I think the spring market right now is pushing everything up in this market. So like, as far as like hot cars right now, we're looking at anything that's, I think the biggest concern everyone has right now is luxury cars with new car tariffs. So I think the luxury car scene is definitely on a rise. I think we're seeing, you know, anything kind of sports car related is obviously a really good is really good merchandise right now. But what's not moving right now are the high supply cars. The Jeep Wagoneer is a car that is in our backyard at every moment, and there's over a 400-day supply on those cars. So I would say that car is something that you're looking to trade back on, and you need to be conservative with.
Chris or Mark, what's hot, what's not?
I mean, to me right now, an Audi product right now seems to be on fire. Reason being, the new ones on lease, and they're just not interested as far as the residuals. So the residuals are always been the same, but the money factors are out of control. So
Out of control being high.
Yeah, like they're crazy high. So like a Q7 before COVID, let's just say, you put $5,000 or $6,000 down, you can lease that car in the upper sixes. That car now is $1,100 a month for the same car. So now what's going on is anything that it was a previous type of lease type car, the depreciation is now kicked into the point where those cars are Something dirt cheap for what they are. Because if you walked into the dealer to go lease a new one, the payments are completely out of whack. And it's not just on Audis, but what we're seeing in the Audi used market is the product is on fire. Like if you have a real car, clean Carfax, some type of RS something, RS5, RS6, RSQ8, any of that type of stuff, it's well past MMR. And they have a lot
And
of.
if you see something come through your trade lane, somebody calls you up like, "Hey, Mark, I need your help on this. I think I want to lay this thing off. It's probably I'm not the best end user for it." What's something that you're going to go? That's not the car I'm the most excited about.
Definitely right now, it just seems to be anything Carfax related. So it's not so much necessarily, and we've talked about pedigree of a car and we can talk about it all the time, but it really matters. We've been buying cars for many years. We watch them run, we get the diagnosis, and then when we look to see what never brought the money, it's usually either a Carfax, it's frame, it's previously stolen. There's usually a story to it. In this type of market, as Matt alluded to, there's a shortage of good cars. There's not a shortage of cars, but there are a shortage of good ones in the marketplace. And that right now is why you're seeing, everybody keeps telling me, oh, the auction's on fire. No. We buy plenty of cars that aren't on fire. The ones you want to buy are the same ones everybody else wants to buy. Those are definitely on fire. So that would be the only thing I would tell you right now. And it looks like it's probably going to be that way for the foreseeable future as the cynical end of the business continues, where we're getting into spring and it's going to be good because we got tax time and all that good stuff. And then obviously as we get closer to summer, we'll get a little bit of a tail off, and with all the other tariff and all the other stuff that goes on, we'll see how it all shakes out.
What's your take on that, Chris?
Yeah, I had to agree with Mark and everything he said. I mean, it's tough to pigeonhole a specific car, but if you're looking at a segment and a condition of a car, the condition thing is important, and the availability of good cars is another great point. I mean, it just that's the one everybody's going to want, and so I don't really think there's a specific car or something like that. One thing I do want to bring up is the impending possible European tariffs after the European Union. Some people I know within the Porsche community are seriously concerned about that. And it seems, speaking with the local Porsche dealers, that people are snatching up used Porsche sports cars, and that I see the values of those really climbing. I have people with them on order, and they cannot absorb a 25% increase on a $170,000 car. So
they should look at that almost like they're raising the MSRPs.
Correct.
Right?
And you can't.
Interesting take.
Yeah. I mean, if it's a niche GT model, sometimes they can get away with that. But it's a niche car to begin with. But your more mainstream product, 25%, that's a lot of dough on a $180,000 car. So I would agree with those. I would agree with the other two guys' sentiments on what's hot and what's not. But there's a lot of moving parts to this thing, and it's going to continue to be fluid as the news changes daily on what's everything's going to shake out. And as Mark said, by the end of the summer, I'm sure we'll have a good idea and hopefully some more stability.
What's your take? Well, Matt's take is on these tariffs.
I mean, what Chris said is spot on, right? Like there's customers that have called him directly and said, "Hey, I have a car on order. Should I continue to hold this car, or should I continue to keep that place in line?" Because you don't really know the uneasiness of that significant amount of money that we're talking about on an expensive car, like that you can get away with on a special niche car. But like these cars that are in that normal trajectory that you can find all over the place, that's going to drive the used car market price up on those cars because the desirability is going to go up, and that would mean the scarcity is going to go way up. So I think that's
a good point.
I think that's what we're going to see.
Great.
What were you going to say, Mark?
I was going to ask about Teslas. If we had to talk about one thing that hasn't been great, And I think a lot of that has to do with the, maybe the consensus of Elon and the whole 9 yards. But the Tesla market at the auction doesn't appear to be on fire. I mean, I had a couple of them last week that ripped off decent money, but I don't think collectively that market's been very good. Chris,
I might have to disagree with that a little bit. I think what happened is there's a lot of news with Elon in the market today. I fielded a phone call first thing this morning about Teslas and what's my thoughts, and you better be prepared to lower them. And, I watched the Teslas today. We looked at a couple of auctions. The Teslas performed well. And I think what we've seen with Tesla, Mark is exactly right. They have been coming down. They've just gotten so cheap. They don't know how much cheaper they can get. If you're looking at a 23 Model 3 for $21,000, I mean, let's think about that. That goes back to the Corolla conversation we had.
That's right.
20 minutes ago. So I think, yeah, there's going to be some things that move through in that market. However, I think they're going to continue to perform. I think it's going to be the higher end stuff. The most volatile thing is going to be your higher end Plaid or Cybertruck or things like that, where you have a slim market. And but the Model Ys and the Model 3s. I mean, the Model Y was the best selling car in the world last year, wasn't it? Something like that.
Yeah, it was like the
Model Y was.
Yeah. But it's also like, when will he wake up and just decide to slash the price again? I mean, that's where you don't really understand exactly what his philosophy is on cutting that price. Because I looked at a Model Y the other day. It's a $77,000 list on a 23. Car's worth $25,000 in the wholesale market. Those.
So let's shift gears on EVs for a second, because I want to get your guys' take on this. So Ioniq 5s, Ioniq 6s, the non-Tesla EVs, you guys are willing to put numbers on cars that nobody else is willing to put numbers on. And you do it like immediately after a lease incentive goes out, or, within hours for dealers to be able to guarantee all their EV values. So what's going through your mind as you're looking at, is it days on market? Is it scarcity? Is it, how do you guys think about that?
First thing I look at is the price of it. Okay. The higher they are, obviously, they're going to be more difficult to sell. The EV market, when it hit a year and a half, 2 years ago, was extremely volatile. I think it's starting to find its own. Okay. You mentioned the Hyundais and things that are sellable. BMW electric product seems to be good demand product. Mercedes, some of it, more your SUVs versus the egg-shaped other thing that they made, the sedan. I mean, they're starting to find their own. And, at the end of the day, they're just cars. There is a market for them. Obviously, the guy that has the electric-only dealership, there is a market for these cars. People do want them. I think production's come down on them. I think that's lined up to help with the incentives. But I think the most difficult ones are the high price ones. A Mercedes Maybach SUV electric car that listed for $180,000. Like, I get it.
How about a G-Wagon, though? The electric G-Wagon.
Electric G-Wagon is kind of a tough sell. It's kind of a tough sell. They sell close to their MSRP. They're not really pushing forward. I mean, they're neat. They're fast. They have this cool feature. They make it spin around in circles. They do donuts like none other, right? All four-wheel drive donuts. But again, I mean, the people that want that car do want the 550, or they do want the 63. And I don't think that's going to change, even though they did put a V6 in the 550 this year. I don't think that's changed anything. And the 63 continues to do oodles and oodles and oodles over MSRP for some reason.
So Matt, Mark, how do you guys look at non-Tesla EVs?
I mean, I just think it's all price point. I think Chris is 100% right. And what we've learned is, not just at the wholesale level, but at the retail level, anything sub $25,000 or $30,000 that you can retail is a really great market, because you can't even get a Honda Accord at this point for that money. Like, even a Honda Accord is like, starting to become, I don't want to call it a reach, but they're expensive.
But what about e-trons?
Oh, e-trons are great. I mean, listen, I had the pleasure of owning one new. They gave me the deal of the century, couldn't pass on it, listed for $115,000. My lease payment was $650 a month. It was unbelievable. You get in it, you don't know what's running and all that, which is great. And you put your foot on the gas. So let me tell you, you will haul ass. Here's the problem with them, though. There's only 200-mile range, 200 miles. And when I run the air conditioning, because it's summertime, it goes from 200 miles really quickly down to under 100, like that. So that's no good, right? But I will say, the one thing I learned about an EV that nobody has ever told me or talked about, I was at the Wawa parking lot. Somebody backed into
That's where it all goes down in the Philly area.
Oh,
That's
yeah.
the source of it.
Yeah, right. I backed into it at the Wawa, hit and run. I come out, I said, shit, I got to get this fixed because it's a lease. By the way, that lease was 12 months, by the way. I bring it down to the Audi dealer. The guy says to me, we can't work on these. They got to go someplace special. Someplace special. Where are we taking it? There's only one body shop on the eastern seaboard that fixes them.
We're at the port?
What's that?
Is it at the port?
Luckily, it's in our backyard.
Oh, it's in our backyard. It's about 30 miles north. Pennsylvania. Guy's spectacular reputation, does great work. So I said to him, okay, well, listen, I'm going to pay for it out of pocket because I don't want to run up my insurance. It's a quarter panel. I had a dent. No problem. Got a phone call. Okay, great. You're going to want to run it through your insurance. Really? How much could it be? Estimates $32,000. $32,000. Why so much? Well, you got to put a hazmat suit on in order to take the car apart because it's all electric. I said, no, really? I said, I wish somebody would explain that to me because I would have reported it missing, because the long and the short of the story is for something in our business that should be a $2,500 fix to get a bill for $32,000. And I've never heard one person ever talk about body work on their EV. What I'm going to tell you,
to think about as they're appraising them.
It's something to think about when you got to do a ding, a dent, a scratch, or whatever. And I don't think the local guy can do it.
So, Benz and Bow Ties recently is appraising this BMW M3 competition.
What do you have for me?
A 2024 M3 CS.
Okay, off to a bad start here.
235 miles.
How long has he had it?
A month. He said it's been filled up once. It's sitting in the garage. He's like, I can't drive. It's a track car in Ohio.
Why'd he get it?
For the thrill of it, and then realized we live in Ohio.
He's probably not going to be thrilled with how this is going to look.
He said, dude, just give me as close as you can to the sticker.
What's he looking at?
Geely 63S.
Bit of a change up. What was the MSRP even on this thing? You said M3, right? This is actually not nearly as bad as I thought it would be. The number's 110, which, given that the MSRP was 119, that's pretty incredible.
Yeah.
Because the $49,000 negative equity situation I just described to you was also on a 2024. The thing that I was most shocked to learn when I was new to the car industry, that I understand very clearly now, is that trading in a car that is practically brand new is much more painful than everybody realizes it's going to be. They always think, hey, it's basically a new car. I drove it home and that was it. The problem is that reselling that car that is now used against new cars is really hard, because especially people that have the kind of money to spend on a car like this, if the price is too similar,
You can just go get a brand new one.
yeah, right? Exactly.
Can you guys talk about the complexity of a 2024 BMW M3 competition, specific color, and the nuances of specific options and carbon seats, and how all that affects the vast difference on a specific niche car like that?
I think I saw that. I think I saw that episode or that reel, and the car in question happened to be an M3 CS. Okay, and
Even better.
BMW they'll do a CS model. It's only for 1 or 2 years, and it's a very, it's a price premium up. It's their track car. Okay, it comes with the carbon fiber seats, the flat bottom steering wheel. It rides like, you can feel every pebble going over it. But if that's the pinnacle BMW M3 you want, they're rare. They're expensive. They're about $135,000 new. That's the one. And I guess in this case, the gentleman only had a couple hundred miles on it, which is kind of common with a car like this. You see people like, why are they getting rid of it? It's just they had their fun with it, or they
Got it out of the
this
system.
kind of money. It really, it's a kind of a different world, so to speak. But that's a unique car. It's different than a regular M3 competition or a competition X drive. It's unique. However, it's a little bit of a weird car because it's a very expensive BMW for what it is. And when you're getting into that neighborhood, you're starting to compete with better cars for the money.
911s, things.
You could be in a 911. You could be in a Corvette. You could be even in a used Bentley or something like that, or a used Aston Martin. So now you're in a different. You're starting. You've come up. If you think about it like a tax bracket, you're in a different tax bracket with that car. You have a very expensive BMW for what it is. You might not necessarily get the value back out of it for the premium you paid for it.
So let's say you're a used car dealer. This thing comes, or you're a new car dealer, franchise dealer. This thing comes your lot. Let's say it's a Jaguar Land Rover dealer, and they're trading it in on an autobiography Range Rover, right? And that's just what they decided to get out of their system. Now they want to get something else. What's the risk of them using just average book numbers on a car like that, or what's the potential exposure if they're not breaking it down by color, by options, equipment, and they're just looking at average auction values are this, I'll just hang that number on it. And I'm not going to talk to an expert.
Yeah, you're playing with fire. When you look at a late model BMW, you brought up the auction, a lot of the transaction results are factory sales. I don't even pay attention to a factory sale result. There are other.
And why is that?
Because there's other incentives involved from the factory. First of all, only a BMW dealer can participate. They incentivize free shipping, or if you buy X amount, or if it's a late model car, 25 with short miles on it, under 2,000, we can use new car residuals, things like that.
You also get extra percentage on your new car margin, right? Once you hit certain targets for the
absolutely, and into the whole back and things like that. So it all ties together, which really takes that sample set out. And a car like this, it all comes back to like when the three of us buy a car, the first thing we think about is who we're going to sell it to. Okay, and you got to take a look at the market on a specialty car like that. You got to look at it closely. You got to look at days on markets. You can't get confused with new cars that are sitting on lots, inflating that average used car price. So there's multiple things, and you have to take a couple different moves around to take a look. The year before, they made an M4 CSL. That's kind of a good car to take a barometer on. Yeah, I know it's only 2 doors versus 4 doors, but it was the same kind of niche, high price, $130,000 BMW. You'll get a good idea of how the M3 CS, even though it's a year newer, will behave as far as its depreciation and remarketability.
Matt, what are we not thinking about as we wrap this up that we should be thinking about in the used car market?
I mean, we're thinking about options, right? Like any kind of differentiation between these cars is what's going to set them apart and what makes them extra desirable in this market.
So if you're going to get a Lexus GX 550 or something, what's the options and equipment that are going to be the most desirable on that?
Well, we're looking for a Trail Pro Plus. Is that right? Is that the model?
The new ones, yeah. I think
Over Trail. Over Trail Plus.
Over Trail Plus.
And if you just look at averages, average VIN number is not going to decode the difference between that one and another one. And so the key is obviously to pay up for the right ones and not pay too much for the wrong ones, right?
100%.
Mark, what's one thing that everybody should think about that we haven't talked about yet?
I mean, we've definitely touched on a lot of really great stuff that we could talk about for hours. I mean, the bottom line is as a used car manager and the whole 9 yards, which, we've all done and we've all been, and desirability, something I touch on, we talk about all the time, because if it's desirable, it's great. You're talking about a Lexus, now they're making GXs now with captain's chairs, which, they should have been making them 10 years ago to compete with Escalades and Tahoes and stuff like that.
When I was a Lexus dealer, that was the number one requested item on every survey was, why aren't you offering captain's chairs in the second row on GXs and LX?
And not only that, but I mean, like even BMW now, an X7 now comes with an interior package that offers that. So when you're watching Manheim and you see 30 of them, 2 bring 220. Why? Those are captain's chairs.
Rear buckets.
Tahoes, Yukons.
So what you have right now is almost as important. It is the most important as far as desirability. If you have something desirable, you're always going to be in good shape. there's a 3-strike rule that we know of, right? And Matt or Chris could tell you what the 3-strike rule is. Color, Carfax, what's the last one?
Equipment.
Equipment. You know what I mean? So when in doubt, just resort back to the 3-strike rule. It doesn't only work in baseball.
So thanks everybody for tuning in. Make sure that you put in the comments below what you want to, any questions you want us to answer on the next episode. Make sure you click to subscribe moving forward so you can get more of this good content from the market makers in the auto industry.